will come through diplomacy and dialogue that allows for the legitimate aspirations of the Syrian people to be realized. I thank you.
Thank you so much for your contribution. I can see member representative of Syria once is burning to talk something. But I think before we listen to Syria, we'll have to listen to Russia.
Your Excellencies and the delegates present. Russia has been accused, and before this General Assembly, we all know that Russia has been accused by many states for not the sanctions against Syria, as well as China and one other country. The question that Russia poses to this delegation today is, for how long are we going to watch as heads of states are hunted and killed? The question that Russia wants answered is, who will be next online after Syria? Once we've answered that, then we will be able to take the right approach towards this Syrian problem. Fellow delegates, you understand very well that a country such as Libya is now struggling after putting so much effort to catch up with the developing world. You realize that the former president of Libya had dreamt of having a United States of Africa. Each household in Libya would have $1,000 annually, every member of a family. The newlyweds would be bought an apartment by the government, and many other things many other welfare issues that the former president of Libya took into consideration. But what was the reward? He rubbed shoulders with the West, and he was murdered. Then the uprising came, now referred to as Arab Spring. Where did it begin? It began in Tunisia, just from a mere propaganda from the West, through their now infamous social net, the website. The propaganda spread very fast and bringing down the Tunisian regime of that time. We're going down to Libya, to Egypt, then Libya, and now in Syria. Should we watch as it comes to Russia or as it goes to China? That is the question that we would want as Russia answered before this plenary. Russia stands for democracy, and Russia stands for sovereignty, and we respect sovereignty. We do not want any interference with a country's sovereignty, and that's why we are saying Syria can handle their issues. We wonder why the West are harming the Syrian opposition. We are hearing of the shelling done by the Syrian forces. We are not hearing of the shelling done by the Syrian opposition. Ladies and gentlemen, fellow delegates, Your Excellencies, Russia's position is that we will veto any vote coming to the floor. We will not support arms raised against the Syrian government. In the 70s, when Syria and the Arab region in general was in dire need of help in terms of infrastructure, it is only Russia who stood by the Arabs and assisted them. The West totally did not support the Arabs. And it is the same West that wants Russia to fight against the Syrian government. On the other hand, the Syrian League, the Arab League of Nations, has not been sincere. They look at Syria as a supporter of the Iran regime. And the Syrian League and the Arab League of Nations believe Iranians are not Arabs. And therefore, Syria being an Arab state and supporting an Arab state should be wiped out. The fact that the majority of the members of the Arab League of Nations are Lawis, as opposed to the ruling party in Syria that is led by the Sunnis, does not give the Arab League of Nations the opportunity to rise against the minority Sunnis who are ruling Syria. Now, are we saying democracy has turned from an uprising of the majority against the minority, even when they are democratically elected? Ladies and gentlemen, fellow delegates, I would ask you as we vote today to think of democracy and to distinguish democracy from propaganda from the West. And let's give Syria an hearing. Let's allow Syria to diplomatically engage among themselves internally and come out with a lasting solution to this problem that has been brought about by foreign forces. And lastly, I would say that the opposition in the diaspora, the Syrian opposition in the diaspora, are looking forward for a peaceful diplomatic solution to the Syrian problem. Whereas, the Syrians, the opposition Syrians in the diaspora, have been poisoned by the West ideology and are therefore looking for an armed solution to the Syrian problem. But the opposition within the Syrian borders, that is the internal opposition, are looking forward to a peaceful diplomatic solution to the Syrian problem. They have seen what has happened in the countries that I just mentioned, and they don't want a repeat of that in their country. As a delegate as the head of delegation from Russia, I rest our case. Thank you.
France.
President of the General Assembly, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I greet you. Now, the French position has always been clear that it highly condemns the crisis in Syria. And representing the foreign ministry, I representing the foreign ministry and my government, we've actually really condemned the violence against the demonstrators who have been killed, whereas they're just demonstrating and they are not even armed. And thousands of civilians have been killed, children, some people have been left homeless, and so much has happened in Syria that should not be happening because it's violation of human rights. And if you remember, on the 23rd of March, the spokesman of the foreign ministry did actually come out and say that France is actually interested or is actually pushing for Syria to carry out immediate political reforms. And France actually recognizes the Syrian National Council, SNC, and supports fully the meeting that is at Istanbul by the opposition. Because according to the French, the opposition represents a better Syria, a better vision of tomorrow for Syria. And it presents a chance for democracy. And France highly condemns the governance by the president Bashar Assad, because as Russia was saying that the president of Syria should be left on its own. But what has happened when Syria was left on its own? People have been killed. There have been bad governance. So many people have lost their lives and suffered due to these uprisings. So there's no way France would support something like that. Because as we can see, the president is not doing what he's supposed to do. And him as a head of state, he should make sure that human rights are upheld. That is an international standard. But this is not happening. So many people have really suffered because of this. And so the opposition, according to France, represents a better view. And due to this, after these meetings, there will be another meeting by the Friends of Syria people in Paris in July 6th, which France also support. And the representative of France will be the ambassador to Syria, Mr. Eric Chevalier. So France is just looking for a better Syria. And even the decision to break the democratic ties that France has with Syria by closing down the embassies in both countries was a way of trying to push for reforms in Syria. Thank you, Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen.
I think with these few remarks, it's time we heard what Syria had to say before we get to China.
We are shocked. How can they talk of us like this? Which democracy are they talking about? The Americans? Democracy? No. We have our own democracy. The Western democracy? No. We have our own democracy.
Thank you for your contribution. I think before China speaks, it's only prudent that the opposition, Syrian opposition, should speak.
Now, it's so appalling that this regime can say that tens of thousands of people who have died are rumors. And this is one regime that has lost its legitimacy among the people. So there's no way they can come here and say that they are not fighting, they are not killing people. Two, the opposition is not killing people. The opposition wants to work to have a new government that will be installed in a legal manner, not fight and kill people. We also are appalled at the Russian response. And we want to say the following, that the Council does not have the intention of killing anyone. If anything, we ask the world to stand by the innocent Syrians whose livelihoods continue to be assaulted, maimed and killed by this tyrannical regime. And we welcome the French support for this. The opposition does not have the arms to do what this regime is saying. Thank you, Mr. President.
We would strongly want to argue that it's no longer a debate for us to debate whether people are being killed in Syria or not, because it is obvious that the lives of innocent people are being taken away, and the perpetrators of violence are inevitably the Syrian government. And from our contribution, we firmly believe that it is a high time that we should come with a resolution towards this. It will be needless for us to sit here for hours without coming with an amicable solution that will represent the interest not only of the international community, but also the interest of the people of Syria, of which we strongly believe that we are the representatives. We are calling for the disarmament of the Syrian government. The reason being, the people of Syria have already lost faith in the government, and they can no longer purport to be protecting the interests of the people who have already lost faith in them. We are also advocating for the upholding of the sanctity of life. I respect the contributions that have come from the Russian government, but we cannot afford to put economical values ahead of the sanctity of life. And for that reason, if it will call for us to be poor as a country, but have freedom, we shall resolve for it. And therefore, we are advocating for the upholding of the freedom of the Syrian people. Our political liberty is not something that will be determined by a Russian government or any other government for that matter. And for this reason, we, as the Free Syrian Army, are ready to go to whichever mile that it will take us to ensure that our freedom is attained. And I'd like to make an appeal to every single state that has a vote in this place, and as many as think that they are a democratic state. It is very unlikely that a democratic state will support a regime that is not democratic, a regime that is dictatorial, a regime that only pursues personal interests and selfish gains, a regime that seeks to amass power for the sake of power. We strongly believe that the international community owes us, as the Syrian people, to join hands with us in solidarity and ensure that there shall be a peaceful, fair, and democratic elections in Syria in order for us to have a government that will represent our interest. I rest my case.
There are the obvious things here. 1, people have died. 2, people are dying. And 3, we've got to stop people from dying. So with this in mind, can we listen to China, please?
His Excellency the President, honorable delegates, good afternoon. This is the head delegate from the People's Republic of China attending the special session of the UN General Assembly meeting to discuss the Arab Spring with a special reference to the situation in Syria. To begin, I wish to register my disappointment with one of the delegates, I think a Syrian observer, who claims that China sent arms to Syria. That is not true. And I wish to say here that it is very unfair and irresponsible of any delegate here to make unsubstantiated claims in this session. Secondly, I wish to respond to a delegate who was also inquiring about why China decided to veto the United Nations Security Council resolution. I would want to say that the People's Republic of China respects the sovereignty of other states, and it has a long-standing policy of non-intervention. And that is why non-interference, and that is why we decided to veto that. We believe that Syria is able to take care and to handle its own domestic issues. Now, to our statement, the government of the People's Republic of China acknowledges the fact that there is a crisis in Syria and greatly empathizes with the people of Syria. Although the People's Republic of China supports the struggle for good and democratic government, it strongly condemns the human rights violations that have been witnessed in Syria over the last 1 year, which includes the killing of innocent civilians, torture, persecution of protesters and journalists, and sexual violence. The People's Republic of China wishes to reiterate its commitment to and respect for human rights. The Republic of China also therefore advocates for a peaceful resolution of the conflict in Syria as opposed to military intervention. This position is aimed at safeguarding peace and stability in the Middle East and is in line with relevant international principles. China is willing to continue its constructive role in easing the tensions in Syria and in safeguarding peace and stability in the region. As you all know, China has called for an immediate ceasefire and talks by all the parties in Syria. I rest my case.
We note with deep concern the ongoings that have been happening in Syria that have attracted international attention, and we also like to laud the UN for calling this session to try and discuss the matter that it has hand. The Republic of Pakistan, however, notes that for any entity to be recognized as a state, it must have fulfilled the requirement of having a stable and working government. And any government that is functional has the fundamental role of maintaining territorial integrity and also maintenance of security. And the judgment on what poses an issue of insecurity rests entirely on that particular government. So members, we find ourselves in a very tricky situation whereby we have a government that it is reacting to some form of threat that it feels is being waged against it, and what internationally is being perceived to be gross atrocities committed towards the citizen of that state. So we are invited to critically to critically analyze the issues beforehand, solve them soberly, and avoid taking sides. And it's because of the sensitivity of the issues of security and maintenance of territorial integrity that's why governments are allowed to possess the monopoly in terms of using force. The issue of democracy has been highlighted depending on which side different groups support. But I'll also like to express one of the descriptions of democracy as provided for by the President, His Excellency Yoweri Museveni of Uganda. In his autobiography, Sowing the Mustard Seed, President Museveni described democracy as having, comparing it to water, where its formula remains H2O. But the same water exists in various forms. We have got water that exists in gaseous state. We have got water that exists in solid state. We still have got the same water existing in liquid state. Water in liquid state is good for quenching thirst or taking a bath. In ice, in the form of ice, it's good for preservation. And in gaseous state, it can provide steam to run a locomotive. That means whatever is being regarded as democracy depends with the perceptions and the interests of different countries. The international organization that we are here conveying our reactions to whatever is happening in Syria, the UN Security Council, respects the issue of change in regimes, and there are very clear ways to which regimes can be changed, clear, acceptable, and legal ways. So this calls upon us as nations to ask ourselves, what is the role of uprisings in the democratic process? Is it one of the recognized ways of changing regimes? As far as we respect that some happenings have taken place in Syria that calls for international reactions, it's crucial that we analyze this issue of Syria critically, avoid taking sides, because we have got a recognized state by the United Nations, and various governments, as represented here, have also entered into diplomatic relations with Syria. So the issue at hand is very critical for all of us. They are not unique to Syria. The atrocities that we have seen being committed in Syria are the same ones that have happened in other countries, that some of which we are representing here, though the magnitude might differ. Why is the same reactions not being waged to those countries, but specifically related to certain countries? So as we are deliberating on resolving the issues in Syria, let's try to be fair, let's try to analyze those issues critically and avoid taking sides. Thank you.
The next member to speak is Ukraine.
I want to bring to the attention of this session pertinent issues, but first I'll start by reiterating my country's position. Ukraine, we are committed to peaceful coexistence world over. Ukraine has consistently